Hi, everyone. Welcome back to an episode of Unmuted. Of course, I've been away for the past few months, and I do apologize about that, but I am very excited to be back. And we're deciding to do this episode live, just introducing some new stuff we're planning on doing the year. And of course, a very special guest that we have today, which I'll get to in a second here. But yeah, I'm very happy to be back and live and hopefully continue as long as we can here. So I'm just going to introduce our guest. If you, of course, the very special guest, I call him part of my original three, one of the first three to join my team NDLS. Member of Parliament for Caribou Prince George, and of course, the Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Suicide and Suicide Awareness, Todd Doherty. Hi, Todd. How
Hey,
are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. I know
Mhm.
it's on a Saturday, so it's appreciate taking your time on your day off here. But great to have
No
you.
worries. No worries at all. And I was listening to the intro, and for those that are listening in that may not know, I just want to also send my condolences to you and your family, as you know. As they may not know, the passing of your father recently, and kind of it's the work that you do with ALS and the work that your father really championed as well too. That's the thing that kind of always makes these things really hard as well too. Our good friend Dean Gorsline um, uh, passed away recently as well, and we lose these champions in our life that are bigger than you know the giants, and you just you when they're gone, it it leaves such a void. And I just want to say that you've been a rock for those who are struggling with ALS and for your own family. And I'm just honored to be here with you and honored to be your friend as well.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much, Todd. It's honor to be your friend as well. And speaking of rocks for issues, I think today I wanted to really get into an issue. I think it's close to your heart, and
Mhm.
I think you're, if not the one of the top, probably the number one guy talking about this. I think in Canada right now, and that's of course mental health and of course suicide
Mhm.
prevention. Which I wanted to actually start with something that happened. I think it was before the Christmas break. Was the CTRC, of course, wants to
Mhm.
implement what you've been working on probably for years, an emergency line to support those who are seeking assistance for those thinking about suicide. And I'd just love to get kind of your take on. I'm not sure not everyone knows what exactly this. I think some people didn't even know it's happening or what it is,
Mm.
and I just want to share light on this important thing that I think will help I think millions of people in Canada. And but I'd love to hear more about what it is and what it will do and why it's so important that we
Mhm.
have this initiative in Canada.
Yeah, so I guess I'll back you up to the very beginning when I was first elected in 2015. I kind of came with a bit of an agenda, as you know. I worked with at-risk youth and young adults for a period of time, teaching crisis intervention and suicide prevention. This is a long time ago, but it's been a passion of mine ever since. I lost a very good friend of mine, my best friend, when we were 14, and I just remember then the feelings of loss and guilt, and guilt that I feel even to this day. You know, if only I would have known. I call them the if onlys. If only I would have known. If only I could replay that night one last time. If only I could just tell my friend that I loved him and that my our world was a better place because he was in it. Maybe that would have um, maybe he would have chose a different path. And I'd still have my friend here, and I would have loved to seen what he would have grown into. Yeah, so in 2015 when I came here or came to Parliament, I came with a bit of a mental health agenda. I wanted to develop a framework for those who are our silent sentinels, who you know, they stand guard for us while we sleep snugly in our beds, and they serve overseas and they serve in our communities, and in the course of their duties they see and experience things that most people can only read about or hear about on the news, and just the horrors of combat, of policing and things like that, and it has a very real impact on people, and many people that serve our country and our communities, or nurses or doctors or social workers. They through the service of doing their everyday job, they're struck with an injury, a mental injury, and that develops into post-traumatic stress disorder. So, we put forth a bill right after getting into Ottawa, immediately after getting there, and through the course of getting that bill passed, C211, making Canada the first country in the world to develop a national framework to combat post-traumatic stress disorder. We discovered that our friends to the south of us in the United States, they were moving forward with another initiative, another tool to combat suicide and to add to suicide prevention efforts, and that was to develop a national 3-digit suicide prevention hotline, one that would be accessible all over, regardless of where you are in the United States. And it was just a simple 3-digit number, similar to 911, but it was called 988. And so we got thinking, why can't we do that here? We have 911, we have 411 if somebody needs information, but if you're in the middle of an emergency and you need police, fire, ambulance, what's the number that you call? It's just intuitive. It's 911. And so we really kind of started getting the ball rolling. There were some civilians that were doing some things too, and we started to pressure government. We started thinking, how can we do this? We started meeting with telecoms, and then December of 2020, we stood in the House. December 11th of 2020, we stood in the House and we put forward a motion calling on the government to immediately establish a national 3-digit suicide prevention hotline and to bring 988 to Canada. And that was the last motion that passed unanimously before the Christmas break in 2020. All 338 members of Parliament, or those that were there, supported this unanimously. And so now the onus is on the government, and it took forever. We were, I don't even know how many meetings that we had to get this done. We really put a lot of pressure on our friends. Well, friends is loosely, but our colleagues in all sides of the House, to try and make sure that the government could pass this. It's really in their the ball's in their court. They could do this if they really wanted to. And it took over, I think it was 680 days, but it was this past August. I got a message from our team that you're part of, a text message saying that the CRTC had done their homework and done all the studies that they needed to do, and they agreed that they were going to launch a national 3-digit suicide hotline. And there's a video that's out. I got the message, and I'm going to get emotional just talking about it. I was in our local Canadian Tire parking lot, and man, I just got a flood of emotion just kind of went over me, because I honestly believe it's going to save lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, I have my own experience with these kind of motions. I remember back in 2017, when a unanimous motion went where the House was going to work on being a leader of ALS, and
Yes.
it can be frustrating because it's as they say, talk is cheap, and
100%.
so it's I understand it was probably frustrating for you to sit in the motion pass and then kind of kind of sat on empty hands, and
Yeah.
kind of it took a bit more fight there, but
Well,
it must have been
and
great. Oh,
to
sorry.
your point, like in 2017 when that motion passed, or in 2020 when my motion passed, they have the will of the House. They
Mhm.
have the power to get this done. Whether it's 988 or to develop a national terminal illness strategy, right? Like, make sure that Canadians have access to Canadians that are battling these terminal illnesses, like ALS. Um, give them access to these medicines and these treatments that people just in the United States have. Our friends and our
Mhm.
family down in the United States. It's not fair. You have the will of the House. Get it done, and that's the thing that's the most frustrating. On the suicide hotline 988 format, people are dying every day. Um, you know, uh, 12. We know that 12 people die by suicide each and every day in Canada, and a further 200 attempt it. And so those numbers are crazy, and those numbers we know that the numbers are very likely higher because so many of these things, because of the stigma attached to mental illness and suicide, that those numbers are likely so much higher. And just like ALS and the fight that your dad and Dean Gorsline and those that are living with this, and the families that are living with this horrible, horrible illness, they're fighting not necessarily for themselves, they're fighting for that next person that comes along that hears that diagnosis that, you would believe you got ALS. Um, you know, uh, that is, and I've seen it. I haven't lived it like you have, but watching it from the sidelines is just absolutely horrific. And
Yeah.
I just think as parliamentarians and as leaders within our community, and there's so much more that we can do. And as you said, talk is cheap. You know, let's just, why do we have to study this? Let's get down and get going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you say look at Dean Gorsland, and he founded ALS Action Canada, and I think my dad was part of the early stages too. And the whole point of their initiative was action, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we want to see. You don't,
Yeah.
it's nice to hear words from parliamentarians, and nice to hear that they making motions and care. But in the end of the day, it's unless there's action behind it, it's just more of a it seems more like politics than actually, in the end of the
Yeah.
day. And people say they care, but I know for me sometimes it's hard to trust what people say. And it's when there's no action behind
Yeah.
the words of what what they say, what they say they're going to do, and never gets
Yeah.
done. And
So we've
but
got somebody that just is tuning in. They're asking, what are we discussing? We're talking about suicide prevention and ALS, and how we got to move 988 to get the government to finally deliver on bringing a national, simple, easy to remember 3-digit suicide prevention hotline. But how, it's how frustrating it is, that how slow the wheels of bureaucracy really kind of turn. I mean, I think it can be applied so many different ways, right? And
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I wanted to kind of turn to, there's a lot of talk with mental health, not just in the House of Commons, but you have, the Bell Let's Talk,
yeah,
and there's a lot of people say they want more action done on mental health and a lot of awareness. But it seems like, especially kind of even those in, a lot of fields, while there's a lot of talk of it, there seems to be a lot of, as we said, not just in the House of Commons, there seems to be a lot of little action or care on the
yeah,
actual mental health issue. I know, talking to someone recently, hearing a story of someone, their employer didn't care. And I think you were part of that conversation as
mhm,
well, where we met with a few people. And it seemed like the employers didn't care about their mental health situation. A new supervisor came in, didn't understand, didn't seem to want to understand. And
yeah,
then of course it led to an unfortunate suicide soon later because the supports seem to go. And
Mhm.
are you finding that more and more, especially after the pandemic, that we're getting, there's not enough, not even just in Parliament, but really across the board, that there's not enough I mean, there's the awareness and the words are there, but it's not really much on the kind of action side of things, even at the local levels and the business levels. Is that what you've been seeing as well, or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's one of the frustrating things that, I deal a lot with, and speak a lot with first responder communities, organizations, as well as veterans community organizations, um, or military. And all the heads of these organizations say we care, we really, really care, and um, but quietly behind the scenes, we're talking to their members and we're talking to those who are really struggling, and they don't feel that they can come forward. They're afraid to come forward. And now, as Michelle just mentioned in there, that now we have this medical assistance in death, and we know that Veterans Affairs, that some veterans that were coming forward and even going on, calling their VA hotline and asking for help, and they were being counseled, have you considered, medical assistance in death? And I think that's obviously not the way that we want to go. We want to make sure that I believe that recovery is always better, and that goes with addictions, that goes with mental health, and that's kind of the way that we want to go. But to your comment, um, uh, is, I think we have so much work that we have to do to try to educate people. I know that when I was going into schools and teaching peer counseling and crisis intervention, suicide prevention, I was told that they really wanted me to come in and do this, but they're like, "Oh, well, can you do it without mentioning suicide? You don't say the word suicide." Because well, it's such a touchy subject that you don't really want to, for fear of somebody copying and what have you. And I think that there's a lot of organizations that are out there that think they misinterpret somebody's um, bad, or mental illness, or the struggles that they're having with mental illness, is, well, they're a bad employee, or they got high absenteeism. Well, you know what? Some days, some people just can't get out of bed, yeah, because of the mental health challenges that they're having, or the depression that they're having, and they're afraid to come forward and say, "Look, I'm just not feeling well." And I don't know whether we actually in we take the time. I said this a very long time ago. Imagine me being 20, 21, 22, giving this lecture to a service club filled with, white men in business suits. And I mean, and I'm not trying to be funny. That's literally what it was.
Yeah.
It was I don't know what the service group it was, and they're all looking at this, scraggly haired 22-year-old, and who's trying to tell them how to be better parents, I guess is what it was. Um and they're like, "Well, why do we need a teen crisis line? Why can't they just tell us what they need?" Well, I failed to see the point of this. And I just said, time is money, and money is everything. And so it's really easy to slap that remote control in the kid's hand and say, and kind of push the comments aside, or and not really look into the things. And you've traveled as well as I have, and you get on that train or sky train down in the lower mainland in Vancouver, and everybody's got that 1,000-yard stare. And somebody sneezes, nobody even says bless you anymore, because you're afraid to get into their space, or you're afraid to get involved in somehow. We had these neighbors move in beside us, and they'd lived about 10 years in Surrey. And the first day that they'd moved in, I was waving at them and saying hi. Um, and then, my son went and asked if he could help and stuff. And they were just they were kind of standoffish. And then at one point, as we got to know them, they said, "For 10 years we lived in Surrey and nobody said anything to us."
Yeah.
And so it's I always say that we just kind of move at such a fast clip, and everybody's got blinders on now. And nobody really takes the time to ask you really how you're doing, or they say that, but then they don't take the time to kind of listen to the response. And I think that we're so afraid to kind of get involved, and maybe we're mired in our own kind of life that is going on, right? And we have to educate people, and I think that education has to start at a very young age. And you have to say that there are normal feelings. It doesn't have to go from 0 to 60 right away. These are normal feelings that you're feeling, and just educate people on what's going on. And we live in this world of, here we are on a podcast. We live on this world where we're kind of run by social media, and everything's online, and that trickles down. The kids are even the same. I was at a doctor's office the other day, and the mom's got her cell phone up, and the kid is looking online, and trying to keep the kid busy. And we just kind of live in that world where that has other influences and consequences in life as well too. I think that we kind of forget about that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's what you said about Surrey, totally true. I've lived down there for a few years, and
Mhm.
just in it seems in these big cities, it's you don't want to, just kind of the blinders on, and I'm just gonna do me, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's just it just definitely gets to an impact, and especially with COVID, I think it's gotten
Yeah,
worse. Where it's just I think I've almost forgotten how to interact with humans sometimes. It's
totally. We're
we've been
social
inside
beings,
so
right?
long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're absolutely social beings, and we're not meant to be locked away in isolation for months and months and months on end. And then, when you're locked away on that, where's your attention going to go? Your attention's going to go onto the 9 by 12 screen that's right in front of you, where there's so much. You're being bombarded with negative information about vaccines and about
yeah,
COVID, and by the way, this is the way that you should look. You get all this kind of, you're bombarded with these messages that if you don't look this way, if you're not wearing this type of clothes, or if you're not doing this, then, and we got leaders like I'm going to be partisan here. You got our prime minister that says, well, if you've got these certain views, well, then we don't have time for you, right? And man, like it just kind of blows me away that yeah, it's super frustrating at times that we live in this. Like I always say this. I really don't care who you love and who you pray to, and what you do. If you're a good person, I'm okay with that. Like I just, we should just, yeah, it's just weird. It's bizarre.
yeah. Well, you mentioned partisan, which kind of will turn me into my kind of next part. So,
Hmm.
of course, you're the shadow minister for mental health and suicide prevention,
Hmm.
and a very important role. I don't think there's a minister of that yet. Kind of in the government level, what have you seen lacking to help fight,
Mm.
suicide prevention? I mean, we've seen the CTRC taking up your 988 number there, but is there other fields that where you see lacking, or where the government can
Mm.
be doing more, especially, of course, with the power of the Privy Council and that they have,
Hmm.
and the Prime Minister, even in these government departments like Health Canada and all others. Of course, we've heard a lot from with current leader of the Conservative Party. The bureaucrats are kind of holding back on what needs to be done, and the
Mm.
gatekeepers. Is there those? Do you see those even in the kind of the mental health fight, where the government can be more active or do more, or even support certain provinces in certain areas?
Yeah, so there is after the 2021 election, the government they created a new ministry of mental health. Um, Carolyn Bennett is currently that. It is seen, in my opinion, it's a junior ministry, because
Mhm.
it's still reporting to the Minister of Health, which I think is, to me, in my opinion, it should be a full ministry. It should be something that you can actually go and do, and which is what we're pushing the minister on. I honestly believe that because of the issues that we've brought up, we've raised on our bench, not just myself but others, That is the reason why. That's the response that so we've got the government to actually start a new ministry, but it's still sharing those dollars, those all critical health dollars that as we got an aging population, as we're being faced with more and more challenges, both economic and mental health challenges, isolation and COVID and what have you. I honestly don't think that we're going to see the full impact of what the lockdowns, the 3 years of dealing, or 3-4 years of dealing with COVID, what that total impact's going to be for another 3 to 5 years. And so, we're already facing a huge mental health challenge in terms of suicide prevention, crisis intervention, but let's also look at the homelessness. Let's also look at the addictions, the opioid crisis that we have. There's a massive, massive challenges ahead of us, and in my opinion, what that needs is it's a total kind of reworked. We need a mental health act, a total rework of how we deal with mental health, how we uh, fund mental health, and treatment, and what have you. I think again. I think Michelle is one that's kind of tuning in, and she's talking about the easy way out and what have you. I think we really need to do some really hard searching within as to how we deal with this, and not always look at the easy way out. Let's, as I said this earlier on, I believe in recovery. I believe that regardless of who you are and where you are, that you should have a chance at life, and a chance to recover. I have a brother that lives on the street that's been gripped with addictions since the 90s. I pulled him off the streets so many times. My other brother has pulled him off the streets so many times. We've gone into drug houses. We've gone into, I've gone into clubhouses to pay off his debt, just so that they didn't, whoever it was that he owed the money to, didn't kill him. And yet, and he was shot twice last year, point blank range with a shotgun. Says all the right things in the hospital while he was recovering, yet, 7 or 8 days after being shot, he's right back out on the streets, taking these drugs. And we just we don't do enough for those that are out there. I was talking with my one neighbor who's an RCMP and does a lot of the mental health outreach as for the RCMP, and said, our facilities here, our hospital here, only allows one intake a month for somebody that is struggling with addictions. One intake a month. So if the RCMP have an interaction with somebody that is OD'd and now has been brought back, and they go and say, okay, well, would you like to get some help? And if they take them to the hospital isn't able to accept them. So and we don't have beds for these people that are looking at. But you know what? Let's give them more drugs. Let's give them a safer supply so they're not ODing. Let's make sure that they're not facing stigma. So they're decriminalizing small possessions. Well, the RCMP, the true story of it is the RCMP already has that. They don't arrest for small personal possessions anyways. And so I just think we need to really be focusing. The question that you asked is, where should we be focusing our attention? I think that we should treat mental health like we do physical health. I think there should be a separate pot of money for mental health. I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we do that, because we do have jurisdictions like BC that have health authorities, where the province gets the health dollars and then divvies it up amongst the health authorities, and then they decide which pools those pots of money go to, or which pots where that funding goes to. And so I just think that we have to really take a deep dive and scrape back to the bare bones and get this right. And we may never get this right, but we have to right the ship in a way. Another thing that I've been really talking about a lot for the last 4 years, I guess, is we have to look to other countries that have really kind of done some things um, the right way. And I always kind of go to New Zealand. It's a tough one to kind of compare because um, they have a smaller population base and smaller geographical, footprint as well too. And they looked at their full national budget back in 2018. They developed a wellness budget, and they looked at every aspect of their government through the mental health and addictions lens. They created more beds and treatment centers for recovery. They really invested in the mental health and wellness, and it had a whole cultural component as well too, which brought in their First Nations and Indigenous peoples as well too, which helped that way. We in the last election we put forward something fairly similar, the platform that my friend John Barlow and I built for the 2021 election. We had a three-plank election platform, and one of the third plank was a kind of a mental health and wellness budget where an elected conservative government would invest more in treatment centers and beds, like thousands. We'd invest in thousands of beds in cultural centers and treatment centers that were located all across our country to really get people. If you want to get better, we're going to invest in you, and we're going to get you better. And there's a bed for you to get better. And I think that's the right way of doing it.
Yeah, no, and it seems that there's definitely more need for, and totally agree with you, a separate pot for
Mm,
the mental health and that. It's funny. I was talking with another CMP officer, I think a month back, and he said, you look at homelessness, you look at the drugs
mhm.
problems, and it stems back to we need to solve mental health, and that'll, I think, Kirsty said it, he says it's a theory, but I think it'll radically reduce all these problems that we see on their streets. I mean,
Yeah,
I know you're in Prince George. I'm Prince George. All you have to do is see the effects of just going downtown to like Second Ave or Fifth Ave, and even behind, I think, your own office.
yeah.
You can really even see it. It's living around the people downtown, and it's we see things like what the current BC government doing is, they want to eliminate stigma on drugs, but it doesn't seem to be solving. To me at least, it doesn't seem it's going to solve the problem. All it's going to do is just, I think, talk around it, and I
Mhm.
think, but as you said, it comes down, I think, to one thing, and that's mental health, and it's and until we combat that, I don't think we're ever going to, until we beat that stigma. I don't think we're going to beat any of the other stigmas around it, and
Yeah.
it's just so encouraging to see someone like yourself that's taken on this fight, for, I think, millions of Canadians, especially I think after the pandemic. I think we've seen a rise of mental health problems surging, and I think people just really needing help. So I just wanted to thank you, Todd, for all the work that you do in not just in the House of Commons, but also in, of course, in the community here in the Cariboo and Prince George. I know you do a lot for the community, and of course, Canadians across, or people across Canada as well, that
Mhm.
rely on this kind of work being done. And as I said at the beginning, it really only seems like a few hand people take on these little issues, but it goes such a far way when it's parliamentarians taking on these stances, not just to say they're doing it for a political stance, but actually care about it and want to see action and change done on these issues.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you for that, and it's really important. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy guy, and as we've been talking about, you got a lot going on,
Mhm.
and I don't want to disrupt everyone's Saturday. But if just kind of one last thing, where can people find you, Todd, to keep up to date on all that you're doing in the House of Commons and for the people of Cariboo Prince George?
Well, we're on TikTok, which I haven't been using. I haven't been posting much. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Todd Doherty MP. We're on Instagram. Todd Doherty MP, as well. And or you can always go to our website as well too. But I have to admit that over the last year, as you know, I've been dealing with a pretty catastrophic knee injury, leg injury, and I've kept a very low profile. Really haven't talked about it much publicly. Obviously, as you know, um, uh, because you deal with it every day being part of my team. But it's it was a really rough year, and this is probably the first time I'm actually really talking about it. But those are the sites that you can turn to, and as always, hopefully when we get back to Ottawa, we'll be posting more. And I love this. This kind of format. Maybe we should do our own kind of podcast and start talking more out there about mental health, and getting some friends of mine that are big names, and chatting about it more. Just want to say thanks to Michelle Bailey who tuned in as well too, and for commenting and taking part in this. And Brad, as always, thank you for what you do, and keep on working hard.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to answer, Michelle's question, how, or to, her statement of how more people can get tuned into this, make sure you share, you like, follow or subscribe, whatever platform you're watching this on. I am streaming this on Facebook and YouTube. We're gonna try and get Instagram, and I may be even worth getting a TikTok to make sure we get more platforms onto this. But we're turning this into a weekly format, so please make sure you share it around, let your friends know. And of course, we're doing this for awareness. And as Todd is part of Team ALS, I hope to have him back. Maybe we get some more of the ALS caucus on here to talk more about those issues for sure in the future. And we'll have to get him on when things progress more, and see how things go with his podcast in the future, when he gets that started. Because I think it'll be really good. We need more issues to be talked about, especially like this. And I think thanks for Michelle for contributing to this live stream. It's really good when people get involved, because that's how we bring change, is when people actually get up and take action. And the biggest thing I found out, in these past 2 years is, just because you're one person doesn't mean you can't make change on things. But it helps when you bring a little more people. And for those following along, with my ALS stuff, right now, I'm involved in a campaign. It's called Racing 338, where we try and bring all the MPs together to bring change in ALS. Right now, of course, Todd Doherty, member of Parliament for Cariboo Prince George, was, as I said, one of the original three, is one of the first three that got on board. And I'm so happy to have him there. And right now, in the past, it's been, I think, 2.5 years. So we've started with 3 on day one, pretty much. And then now we're at 26 members of Parliament. I'm officially happy to say it is a nonpartisan effort. So we do have a few other members on multiple two parties, where we're working on getting all the parties involved. It'll take time, but that's why you got to share videos like this. We're hoping to have the ministers of health on here, and the shadow ministers as well. We're working on that, but keep in tune for more on these issues, and make sure to like, follow, subscribe to my Facebook and YouTube page. It's all under Brett Wilson. And let's make these issues more known for everyone. Thanks, everyone.